Hey, so good afternoon and welcome everyone to the virtual vigil for Afghanistan. My name is Khalda Nasiri and I'm the Executive Director of the Afghan Youth Engagement and Development Initiative, or ID.
And my name is Marjila Yusuf. I am the Vice President of ID. Khalida and I will be your MCs for today. ID is a nonpartisan organization that aims to build the mental, psychological, and emotional health of Afghan youth in Canada through civic engagement, community leadership, and mentorship opportunities. We would like to begin this afternoon with an acknowledgement of the land we are on. We want to emphasize that we are on the indigenous lands of the Huron-Wendat, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee peoples, and the Mississaugas of the Credit River. We acknowledge that we have the privilege to function on these lands because of the ongoing processes of colonialism, and we encourage each of you to confront your own positions on these lands. Some technical points before we begin. Everyone will be muted and only myself and Khalida will be able to unmute speakers. Attendees are welcome to keep their cameras on. Please note that the vigil is being recorded and live streamed on our ID Facebook page.
So the Canadian Campaign for Afghan Peace is an initiative under ID. This campaign represents a united cross-section of voices from the Afghan community in Canada, urging decision makers from all parties to take immediate action for Afghanistan. And our campaign centers around our open letter, which emphasizes the urgency of the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan and calls for several immediate actions that can be taken, including increasing humanitarian aid and assistance, expanding the Afghan resettlement program, engaging in proactive international diplomacy, and prioritizing the rights of girls, women, and vulnerable groups.
We would like to thank you all for joining us this afternoon to pay tribute to the lives lost in Afghanistan, to raise awareness about the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan, and to highlight organizations and voices from different fields and sectors who are working to support Afghanistan.
Today's event is about those we have lost. My own parents came to Canada as refugees in the early 90s through the UNHCR in India. And growing up, I always heard stories from them about their journey, about how much they missed home, and the conflict that they managed to escape from. I never thought that I would be witness to the same thing happening almost 30 years later. And I know a lot of us here, a lot of Afghans here, we all know someone who has died or has been affected as a result of the conflict in Afghanistan, a cousin, an uncle we've heard of, a relative. We all know someone. We've all been affected by what happened there. To the world, the war in Afghanistan is the forever war. It's just the war that's always happening. It's always in the background. And thousands of innocent Afghan lives have been lost throughout the war, and they have been forgotten. And so today's virtual vigil is about taking the time and the space to remember and pay tribute to these lives. Every life mattered. Every life was a son, a daughter, a sister, a brother, a father, a mother, an aunt, an uncle, a bright light for the future. Every life was a human being with potential.
These are the lives that have been lost in the past 2 weeks. Some were identifiable, others unknown, but very much in our hearts. Some of these names were people who died from the series of attacks at the Kabul airport on August 29. Some of these names were Hazaras who were massacred. Some of these names were people who tried to catch a flight to a brighter future by grabbing onto a departing plane and who ultimately fell to their death. Wahid Karaman, Jafar Rahimi, Syed Abdul Hakim, Ali Jan Tata, Zia Faqir Shah, Ghulam Rasul Reza, Saeed Ahmad, Zia Marifat, Karim Bakhsh Karim, Fawad Andarabi, Najma Sadiqi,
Fado Mohammad, Zaki Anwari, Sumaya Ahmadi, Farzad Ahmadi, Ahmad Nasir, Faisal, Zimarai, Zamir, Nasir, Benyamin, Armin, and the countless others whose names we don't know, but who were very much human beings. So today we remember them. And so I would like to ask you all to please join us in a 1-minute moment of silence. Take this moment to pause and honor these innocent people. They were people who loved and were loved. In your own way and silence, let us take a moment to honor them. And today we stand together in solidarity with Afghans and Afghanistan. Thank you everyone for observing that moment of silence. And we hope that it was a moment of reflection and remembering these innocent lives.
At this time, I would like to invite Frishta Bastan to say a few words.
Oh, oops, never mind. Sorry about that. Hello and salam, everyone. Sorry about that. It looked like it wasn't able to unmute, but now I'm unmuted. Thank you so much for having me here under these circumstances. Before I start, I do want to extend my deepest condolences and solidarity to the entire Afghan community. It's been an incredibly difficult and painful few decades, but in particular, very painful couple of weeks. I do want to acknowledge and also recognize the work the CCAP and the team behind who is hosting today's vigil have been doing. These folks have been working nonstop, day in and day out, while mourning, while in pain, while hurting themselves. Most of us have family members back in Afghanistan. Most of us have family who have been affected and impacted by the recent violent attacks. So the fact that this community, this group of individuals were able to still shift their emotions and channel their anger and rage to something productive, something tangible, that is now a national countrywide campaign is something to be recognized and acknowledged. So I personally do want to thank the team at CCAP and ID and all their volunteers and supporters for putting together today's vigil, but also the work that they've been doing for the last few weeks. So thank you so much. I'm going to just perform a poem today in solidarity with the Afghan diaspora around the world. I hope that it resonates. It's the context of the poem is of course different than I first wrote it. So it means a little bit different now, but I hope nonetheless that folks are able to resonate with it. The place of back home, a place where I could see as far as my imagination can take me. The place where my mother's feet dance the bazaars, a place where my father's eyes witness history, a place where people fly kites beside drones and skyrockets, a place where tragedy is an everyday reality, the place where resilience is natural, organic, a place of shers, courageous lions, the place of unapologetic identity amongst imperialistic and occupational boundaries, a place of love and light, cultural beauty, up the place they call Behisht, heaven on earth, a place of the dripping dark ink of Anar, pomegranate on hands, the place where strength and courage is born within every heart, a place with fighters and warriors, the place with rooftops above Asia, a place with sweet tea and salty blue waters, the place of shimmering lapis lazuli, incomparable crafts and addicting poetry, the place for the children of the diaspora who know and don't know an unfamiliar nostalgia. From Kandahar to Herat, from Ghazni to Balkh, from Laghman to Kunduz, they can't break this bond. There's no place like Afghanistan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Frishta John, for your always beautiful words. We will now be hearing from 5 organizations who have been supporters and endorsers of our campaign's open letter and the Afghan cause. I would like to invite Jose Chacon, Program Officer at Oxfam Canada, to please say a few words.
Am I unmuted now? Okay. Thank you, everyone. My name is Jose Chacon, and I work for Oxfam Canada. Okay. So Oxfam is a global organization working to end the injustice of poverty and inequality with a focus on women's rights. We have been working in Afghanistan since 1961 on issues like livelihoods, food security, gender equality, and humanitarian response. Our hearts are breaking for the people of Afghanistan, whose dreams of peace are dashed once again, particularly for women human rights defenders who have stood up against all odds to build a brighter future for Afghan girls who now face the greatest risk of all. We are proud to support the Canadian campaign for Afghan peace and its demands to the Canadian government. Canada has the resources, ability, and moral obligation to help the Afghan people who have risked their lives in pursuit of peace, development, and human rights over the last 20 years. Canada must use all the tools at its disposal to swiftly welcome as many Afghan refugees as possible, particularly human rights defenders, women's rights activists, and members of ethnic and religious minority groups. We know Canadians will step forward and provide meaningful assistance and opportunities for them. People who will become our friends, our neighbors, and contributing members of the Canadian society. Canada and other nations must also prevent this unfolding human tragedy from becoming a full-blown catastrophe by scaling up humanitarian assistance. The humanitarian response in Afghanistan is woefully underfunded, with only 40% of required funds received so far. Canada, let's act swiftly so that progress won on the rights of women and girls in Afghanistan is not lost. Let's seize this opportunity to demonstrate leadership within the international community and its much needed time. We cannot afford to let another day pass without bold and rapid action. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jose, for joining us today and for your for sharing your thoughts and for your important calls to action. Afghanistan definitely does need more humanitarian assistance, and those needs will only grow in the next weeks and months. So thank you. We next would like to invite Razia Sayad, a commissioner from the Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission, who is joining us today from Kabul, I believe. We can give her permission to unmute.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me to speak today. I would like to appreciate this initiative, which gives us all the opportunity to advocate for fundamental rights of Afghan people, especially women, children, vulnerable groups, civil society, and human rights activists at this important moment. Since the Taliban seized control over Kabul, desperation, sadness, and fear filled the air. Unfortunately, we are back to the era of 1996. Taliban gradually reimposed their restrictions. Women has disappeared from political, social, and economic spaces. Taliban have asked women to stay at home. They only allowed girls to go to school up to the grade of 6. Women were sent back from offices, banks, media outlets, and asked to stay indoors. They only allowed medical staff to join their works. Taliban don't think women should be part of senior roles in the new government. They ban playing music. There are pictures of smashed musical instruments and social media that show the beginning of the same nightmare. They push women encompassing burqa and be accompanied by a male relative where they go. Since they took the control of Kabul, thousands of people immigrated, and many of whom might also lack citizenship, which would result in them being unable to access anything, especially financial services. Additionally, hundreds of people received confirmations from different countries, but due to the crowd of people at the gates of Kabul airport, they remain in Kabul and they are looking for evacuations. They are at risk. Thousands of people lost their job. Despite violations of civil political rights, there are concerns about the economic and cultural social rights of the people. There are many internal displaced people with the humanitarian needs. In the last 2 weeks, about 27 media channels closed in 4 provinces of Afghanistan. Finally, all human rights, including the right to live, right to movement, right to education, right to health, right to work, and many more rights are being violated. At this moment, we need to have such gathering, such campaign, in order to advocate for the rights of the people, for the rights of those individuals who are at risk in the country and who are so vulnerable. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Razia John, for sharing with us information from the ground in Afghanistan. We are united in our call for protection of human rights and protection of at-risk individuals. Up next, I would like to invite Shivangi Misra, Senior Manager of Human Rights at the Canadian Feminist Alliance for International Action, to say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you for organizing this vigil. The Canadian Feminist Alliance expresses its deepest and strongest solidarity with the women in Afghanistan. In this moment, the women and children of Afghanistan need a safe home and a life of dignity, certainty, and purpose. And for many years, FAFIA as an organization has advocated for the strengthening of women's human rights by holding the government of Canada accountable, both internationally and domestically. The Canadian government has committed to international human rights law at different levels to protect and promote women's rights, and it needs to fulfill that commitment now more than ever. International human rights law compels us to take all possible measures to ensure protection of those who have participated in women's movement, human rights defenders, women in the workforce, at home, and allow refugees asylum and a safe passage. Canada is party to a number of international treaties with special relevance to the human rights of asylum seekers, including the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Canada is also party to the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Punishment, which define and protect the rights of marginalized groups in situations of grave danger. Today, we fully support the demands of the Canadian Campaign for Afghan Peace in their calls for action for the government. We support them in their demands that the government accepts resettlements this year and waive the requirement that the Afghans must be recognized as a refugee by the UNHCR. Canada must provide timely communication and access to evacuation for those still within Afghanistan. The government must insist that women who want to leave are allowed to leave and that humanitarian aid is delivered. We can lead the way to implement the standards that the government has committed to at the international level. Most importantly, we strongly urge the government to consult various Afghan women's rights organizations, social justice advocates, and experts with years of experience engaging with women's human rights issues and locally rooted solutions. The humanitarian crisis of instability is a result of decades of war, occupation, and an ongoing historical cycle of violence that must end. Today, we mourn the lives lost and the personal sacrifices unacknowledged in the struggle for true liberation. And as feminists, Afghan women are the first voices we must listen to in all their diversity and continue to listen to them until they're safe and free from all forms of oppression. FAFIA believes and advocates for human rights which are universal, indivisible, and interrelated. In these times, these values should be the center and focus of any international effort to support Afghan women. In solidarity, thank you.
Thank you, Shikangi, for your strong call to action. We deeply, deeply appreciate your support and your solidarity with the Afghan people and Afghan women leaders as well. Next, we have Nasreen Hosseini, Vice President of the Canadian Hazara Humanitarian Services.
My friends, fellow Canadians, and brothers and sisters of our native motherland, peace and blessing to you all. I hesitate in saying good afternoon, as it is not a good afternoon at all. It has not been for decades for our people, the people of Afghanistan. It hasn't been good for over a century for Hazaras. We have suffered over a century of perpetual persecution based on our race and religion. From 1891 to 1893, tens of thousands of Hazaras were forcefully displaced from their lands and exiled, while many other thousands were forcefully proselytized, raped, and enslaved. During the 90s Taliban rule, the Hazara suffering continued. In 1998, the Taliban systematically slaughtered thousands of Hazaras in cities of Mazar-e-Sharif and Bamiyan alone, despite being one of the first to lay down their arms and give peace a chance. In post 9/11, Hazaras continue to be the subject of daily attacks, be it within the sanctuary of religious places, in gymnasium, in the streets, or on public places, public buses. Attacks such as the May 2020 assault on the Medicine Sans Frontier maternity ward in Kabul, Dasht-e-Barchi, where infants still in incubators were targeted, or the May 2021 assault on the Sayyid al-Shuhada all-girls school, where as many as 94 girls died, have proven that Hazaras are a target, regardless of age or gender. The 2021 United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan report indicated that 80% of civilian casualties were on the Shia Muslim religion minority belonging to the Hazara ethnic group. And despite the Taliban's claim of change, tolerance, and equality, they have not changed. Their thirst for spilling the blood of innocent Hazaras has not quenched. As they advanced towards Kabul, they sacked and killed anything and everything in their path. On August 19, Amnesty International reported that the Taliban had, quoted, carelessly massacred 9 Hazara men in the town of Molistan and the province of Ghazni. The Canadian Hazaras Humanitarian Services prides itself to be the voice of the millions of Hazara men and women that are now imprisoned inside of the Taliban's lair, as well as those that have braved the impossible and fled to the neighboring countries. Like many of you, every single member of our organization have loved ones that are either a prisoner or a refugee in despair. Today, we stand here in solidarity and unity and pledge our unwavering commitment that we will move heaven and earth to break you free from those shackles. And we will journey mountain and oceans to provide you the refuge you deserve, the peace that you have so long yearned for. In closing, on behalf of the CHHS, I would like to thank the Canadian campaign of Afghan Peace, the Afghan Youth Engagement and Development Initiative, and all the brave young men and women that helped organize this vigil. Together, stronger, together we can, and together we will. Thank you.
Thank you, Nasri John, for your impactful words. We feel your pain and your grief, and we stand steadfast in solidarity with our Hazara brothers and sisters. I would like to next invite Nuria Kamran, Executive Director of Children Without Borders, to say a few words.
First of all, I would like to pass my regards to everyone and thank Khalida John from IED and CCAP for organizing this vigil. My name is Nuria Kamran, and I am the co-founder and executive director of Children Without Borders. CWB is a registered nonprofit organization that was formed to eradicate child labor in Afghanistan. After a very thorough research, we learned that 1 in every 4 children in Afghanistan have been forced to quit school and become the breadwinner of their households. As we saw an urgent need to be addressed, we launched CWB with the mandate of eradicating child labor, making education accessible to children of poverty-stricken families of different ethnicities, raising awareness and improving the quality of living for these families, most of whom are orphans. As an organization with over 500 children and over 60 being female, the crisis directly impacts our mission and our efforts that we have been performing since October 2016. As of today, the current regime has reopened schools from grade 1 to grade 6. However, there are students from grade 7 to grade 12 that are left with uncertainty and no date for school reopenings. We have been told that schools will be reopening soon. However, they'll be segregated, but that is not confirmed. And that's a great concern to all of us at CWB. In addition, CWB was also working with families of these poverty-stricken families to empower women and be gainfully employed. However, we have had to put a pause to ensure the safety of these females, who are the only guardians of their children. CWB strongly supports ID's open letter, specifically requesting the government to increase the number of resettlements. In the last 2 decades, Afghanistan was represented in international platforms such as the Afghan robotic teams, as well as CWB sponsoring the gold medalist Shukriya Bahmani's journey to Abu Dhabi. However, as the crisis continues, Afghanistan and the younger generation will be deprived of their basic rights to education, and Afghanistan will go back to the dark days. Now, I'd like to share the story of one of the girls that have been sponsored by CWB since April 2017. Mursal, a young 12-year-old female and the eldest of her sibling, was forced to quit school and start polishing shoes in Sharanau in order to help her mother with their household expenses. After locating Mursal and verifying her, CWB enrolled her in a private school where she has been attending in the last 3 years. Her dream was to become a journalist and be the voice and an advocate for the Afghan children who were forced into child labor. She was determined and highly passionate. However, today she feels broken and her dreams have been shattered. Mursal knows that the current regime will make it challenging, if not impossible, for her to follow her dreams and be a woman with a voice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nuria John, for sharing your work and for sharing Mursa's story. The community is grateful for the enormous work that you and Children Without Borders have been doing to support children and families in poverty in Afghanistan. And to date, they have raised, I believe, over $200,000 for their latest work. And I encourage everyone here to check out Children Without Borders and the awesome work that they're doing for folks back home. We now move on to our next set of speakers. We have several dignitaries who are here today joining us. We'd like to begin by welcoming the Liberal Party of Canada candidate for Peterborough Kawartha and the Minister for Women and Gender Equality and Rural Economic Development, the Honorable Miriam Monsef.
تشکر خالد جان، تشکر مارجیلا جان. انا لله و انا الیه راجعون. Bonjour, Anin, salam alaikum. I join you from my home in Peterborough, Kawartha on Mississauga and Anishinaabe territory. Safe and sound, with my loved ones, also safe. But like all of you, my family and I grieve loved ones lost and fear a really dark chapter of history repeating itself. Khalid John, you're absolutely right. Every life mattered. Every death and disappearance over the past few decades has left scars in families and in our communities. And I don't know about your families, but my family doesn't talk about it much. They don't talk about it much, but it affects our daily realities and it's passed on across generations. I've read your letters and everyone on our team has been watching carefully the efforts and the advocacy and the amplification of voices that groups like yours have been taking part in. And I also want to speak to the pain and to the anger and the frustration that's out there. It's valid, it's real, and I am so incredibly proud of you for channeling it into action because we need your voices right now. We need your voices to the resettlement, the big picture policy making on the future of Afghanistan, the ongoing negotiation with the terrorists in charge now happen in a way that is relevant and responsive to your needs. And we also need you to continue to engage with decision makers. This is a time to stay at the table, to continue to talk to us as you are right now and show us effective solutions. I hope that one of the few silver linings of this travesty is young Afghans in Canada mobilizing to step up as elected officials and in other decision-making capacities. I'm the only Afghan woman running in this election. Last election, there was another Afghan woman running and she lost by about 800 votes. This has to be, and I see that it is, a uniting opportunity for the close to 100,000 Afghans here in Canada. We have contributed to our communities, to the Canadian economy, and we have something to say. There's a lot of pain, but there's a few areas that cause me hope. First, Canadians care. Canadians are flooding our inboxes with how they can help. We need to seize this momentum and goodwill, and as Afghans, show the way. As I learned the hard way last week, that cultural competency that's going to be so critical to effective settlement has a long ways to go. A trauma-informed approach is necessary, and only Afghans can help shape that effort. The Prime Minister, as per your call, has made Afghanistan his #1 foreign policy priority. That's a big deal. The Prime Minister, as you saw yesterday, the leader of the Liberal Party, has also committed to up to 40,000 Afghans resettled. We'll need your help with this highly complex resettlement process. We are, as you have requested, consulting with Afghan diaspora, allies, and community leaders. There have been about half a dozen conversations so far, and those conversations are going to continue because we need you to show us the way so that we get this right, because the rest of the world is watching. I was at the G20 last week, and everybody agrees on some common principles. Everybody agrees the Taliban are the bad guys. Everyone agrees we must protect women's rights, human rights, minorities' rights. Everybody agrees about the importance of allowing safe passage, but not everyone has asked and offered to open their borders for refugees. In fact, many have said, no, thank you. Canada was the first country to step up with a big number of 20,000. Our colleagues and neighbors in the UK have recently upped their numbers as well, but there are 39 million Afghans in Afghanistan, and we are everywhere. Afghan diaspora are all over the world, and we need to work together to ensure all governments are responding. At the Interparliamentary Union meeting just a couple of hours ago, countries like Uruguay, Rwanda, and Uganda are stepping up to welcome Afghans onto their soil. Let's remember our allies in this difficult moment, and let's reach out to them. The Afghanistan of today is not the Afghanistan of 20, 30 years ago. Girls like us listen to our mothers. We went to school, we found our voice, and we are speaking up, and we need to keep it up. There are a lot of women in Afghanistan, as was mentioned, who are disappearing. They are invisibilized, and we need to ensure that their voices, including the voices of women parliamentarians, continue to rise and shape the discord. I thank you for this opportunity and for not just the space to speak with you, but the space to grieve. It has been an intense few weeks, and it's good to know that young leaders like you are with us. Rest assured, Canada will not abandon Afghanistan and will continue to lean on you for your expertise and wisdom. Tashakkur, back to you, Khalida Jan, Marjila Jan.
Thank you, Minister Monsaf, for being here with us today. I would now like to invite Federal New Democratic Party representative and NDP candidate for Edmonton Strathcona, Heather McPherson, to say a few words.
I'm unmuted now. First of all, thank you for everyone for being here. Thank you for all of you who have organized this important event. I'd also like to thank my colleague Miriam for her words and for articulating how filled with grief we all are, and all Canadians are at this time. It's been really hard to have to watch what's been happening in Afghanistan. I was at a rally in Edmonton just on the 1-year-old who told me he'd lost in Afghanistan at the Kabul airport. He was an 11-year-old boy, and he could describe to me about how his uncle had died. And I thought to myself, I don't want to ever know that a child knows how a car bomb works. I don't want to ever have a child be able to describe that and have to go through that pain and know that the world is that sort of a place. At this rally, we also sat and watched Afghans gather in Edmonton, and we watched, there was a little Hazara girl that was sitting on the steps that was waving the Afghan flag. And I thought, this is what we've done so much work in Afghanistan for. This is the vision of what Afghanistan should be, this beautiful country with this incredible history and this incredible, history of art and literature and music. To have women and girls empowered, to empower them to be able to reach their potential, to know that little girls in Afghanistan can go to school is something that is the vision we all need to be fighting for. My background is in international development. My background is in foreign affairs. I have worked with organizations in Afghanistan for over a decade before I was elected into politics. And to know that we have spent so much effort and time working with our partners, working with our allies to make sure that those women and girls had opportunities, that they had potential, and that has been ripped away by the Taliban breaks my heart. And I know it breaks the heart of all of us that are on this call today. But I also have to say that I'm also angry. I'm angry because it didn't have to be this way. I wrote to our Minister of Foreign Affairs in February and said how deeply concerned I was that what has come to pass in August would come to pass. We had already seen the Taliban exclude women from the peace process. We had already seen steps be taken that we knew were not going to end well, and yet we didn't do everything we can in Canada to make sure that our allies, our friends, women and girls, religious minorities, those most vulnerable, the journalists, the judges, that they were able to get out of Afghanistan. So I don't want to make this a political thing. I think it's much more important than that. But I do want to just say that we need to do better. Canada as a country needs to do better. We can't say things like 20,000 Afghans will be settled, or 40,000 Afghans will be settled in Canada, and then only bring 5,000 out. That's not good enough. That's not sufficient. We need to do more. We need to do better. Moving forward, we have to work with our allies. We have to work with third countries to do everything we can to protect Afghan lives and to help people resettle in Canada. I'm going to continue to work with my leader, with Jagmeet Singh, and with our entire caucus to ensure that happens. If there's any way we can assist, any way that we can amplify or work with the Afghan community, please, please, please reach out to us. And again, thank you for giving me an opportunity to share this moment with you today and to grieve with you today.
Thank you, Heather, for being here today, for standing in solidarity with Afghans and Thank you to the NDP and your leader who has endorsed our open letter as well. We greatly appreciate your solidarity with our campaign. So thank you. Next, we have Annamie Paul, the leader of the Green Party of Canada, who's here with us today. Annamie, I believe you are live.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, it wasn't allowing me to unmute before. Thank you so much for having me with you. It's an honor to be with you, and thank you so much to Canadian Campaign for Afghan Peace for all that you are doing. And I say this very sincerely as someone whose life partner of almost 30 years now was an advisor on the peace negotiations, and who has many friends and colleagues who are trapped and terrified in Afghanistan now. I say thank you very much for doing all that you can to keep attention on Afghanistan, on the need to rescue those who remain behind, be they Canadians or be they all of those people who supported us, who fought with us, who protected our lives, who allowed us to do our important work. During my press conference today, I was asked by a reporter, why are you speaking about Afghanistan? I mean, are there other things, and your party is known for the climate? And what I said is that I will always continue to speak out and to urge action on Afghanistan. I will always try to include that in my remarks, because people's lives are at stake. People who counted on us are in fear of their lives, and because we cannot look away and we cannot turn away after we have given our word, because our word is our bond, and people have to be able to rely on us. When we say that we're going to do something, that we are going to do it, even when it's hard, even when it is inconvenient, even when we're in the middle of an election. I called for a federal leaders debate on this topic because I believe that our response to the situation in Afghanistan deserves it. We have not had that, but I extend that invitation again. I extend the invitation to every single political leader of all of our major federal parties to make a point every single day of asking about what is happening on the ground in Afghanistan, what can we do, and urging people in Canada to keep their attention focused on this issue, because these things sometimes fade away. But the danger for the people who are trapped in Afghanistan does not fade away. And so you can count on me to do that. I'm getting, thanks to my partner, I am getting my husband, I'm getting regular reports from Afghans who remain within the country and those who have succeeded in fleeing. I am going to continue to do all I can to draw attention to this. I hope that you will also stay strong and continue your work, because again, we know that without the advocacy and the militancy, that the cameras turn away and the story moves on, and we cannot let attention move on from this incredibly important issue. I believe that the government, that the ministers responsible should be focusing on this. This should be their top priority, so that we can see a credible, actionable, quick plan to get all of those who need to get out of Afghanistan. And then we can begin to talk about how we can continue to support the rest of Afghan society. All of those who remain in danger under Taliban rule, we cannot look away, and we should not look away, and I will never look away. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Ms. Paul, for your continued solidarity and for endorsing our open letter and positions. There are no words that can undo the grief, the sadness, and the pain that the Afghan community is feeling right now. There are no words that can bring back the innocent lives lost in the violence and the terror that has rained down on Afghans over the last month and long before that. There are no words that can take back the trauma that babies and young children ripped apart from their families now face, or the devastation of a mother holding her son's lifeless body outside the Kabul airport. What we can do is hold space for our collective grief. We can remember and we can stand in solidarity and we can take action.
And so we say to all of the leaders here today and those watching from across Canada and the country, what comes after words is action. And so Canada has an obligation to Canadians, to our allies, and to Afghans. It's an obligation to uphold the rule of law and to protect international human rights. And Canada must continue to stand in solidarity with the Afghan people. And as Nasreen John powerfully said, and if there's one thing that we all take away from today's vigil, I hope it is that together stronger, together we can, and together we will. And so for everyone in attendance here today, please do visit id.ca/ccap, which will be posted in the chat, to learn more about how you can take action now and to access our resource guide that will support you in navigating the Afghan Canadian refugee resettlement process, connect you with professionals who have offered their services, to learn about humanitarian relief programs in place for Afghanistan, and provide you with some mental health resources, because we recognize that today's event and the discussions that we heard are extremely, extremely heavy.
And with that, we conclude today's vigil. We do recognize that this is an extremely difficult time, and we do want to remind you to please make sure to take care of yourselves. And you can refer to the mental health supports included in our resource guide. For that, we urge you once again to make sure you do that. Our hearts, our thoughts, and our prayers are with you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Khuda Hafiz. Stay connected. Yes, as Bonan said, thank you to all the speakers who have joined us today. Thank you to the Honorable Mary Monsef. Thanks, Frishta, John, just reading through the chat. Thank you, Zahra John, Miriam, Mehengiz John, Mona, Kanza, Fahima from AWO, Aziza, Adam. Thank you all for being here today. Arzo was asking about a virtual event tomorrow. We're not aware of an event happening tomorrow. Maybe another organization.